Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It is Sunday night, Vince, and that means it is time for our Upon Further Review breakdown. That's Vince D'Addario. I'm Brian Driscoll. We are Irish Breakdown. And Vince, we dove into the film. Yesterday, we kind of gave our immediate reaction from watching the game, immediate-ish. And we had the way back from Chicago.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah, sort of immediate-ish reaction. We always like to dive back into the film because as coaches, every coach that has ever been intellectually honest will tell you there are always things you think you see or thought about a game, and then you dive back into the film. Some things are better than you thought they were. Some things are worse than you thought that they were. And so that's what we're going to discuss in today's show. What did we see when we dove into the run game? And then also some of it's going to be sort of looking at it, but then forward thinking in it. And that's what we're going to do today. So yesterday, Vince, we talked a lot about the defense, obviously, and how good it was, and we're going to get into that. We started with the defense. Today, we're going to start with the offense because that's the ball that has everybody talking. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little frustrated by it today on our message board because everybody kept talking about the offensive line and the quarterback. And I'm like, Hey, y'all, we just watched one of the best defensive performances of the Brian Kelly era. Let's not forget about that and not talk about that. So we will get to that. But look, we're also going to give the people what they want. And that is a talk about the offense. And
absolutely.
So, Vince, I want to start with this overall view. And I'm going to say this to you. We did a little show prep before. I did not say this to Vince. So you are all going to get Vince's immediate reaction to my statement. It's twofold.
Okay.
I was very frustrated with what I saw yesterday breaking down the Notre Dame offense. I was also very encouraged because I feel like we don't know whether it's going to get fixed or not, but I kind of feel sort of like I did after when I looked at the defense in the first two games. And that is they're actually not that far away. And they are trying to make changes. And if they can just make a couple tweaks personnel-wise and technique-wise and scheme-wise, I really feel like this offense is ready to take off. There are some guys that need to play better. We're going to dive into that. But when I watched this against a pretty good Wisconsin run defense, Notre Dame was terrible in the run game yesterday.
No, they were not good. Yeah, no.
But I feel like I watched it and I'm like, they weren't getting their butts kicked in the run game. They weren't executing in the run game. That was the thing at the end of the day that kind of encouraged me, but then also depressed me because I'm like, why am I encouraged that Notre Dame didn't get their butts kicked in the run game? But anyway, Vince, that was my takeaway is it was bad, but it's fixable and can be fixed quickly. Your thoughts on those two things?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because the things that worried me about the offensive line as I was watching the film, it's stuff that we do on day one at the high school level. We talked about this in our pregame prep. The first thing you do before you even put pads on, before you do, anything, is stances and starts. Your steps, right? What's the first step that you take when the ball is snapped? All of that kind of stuff. And fundamentally, that's not what they're doing. I can't fault their effort. They're trying. The effort is there. They're fighting. They're doing more there than they were at the beginning of the season. So, okay. Check the box. That's cool. But it's more the fundamental things. And we're going to dive into a little bit more of that specifically about what that looks like in pass pro, what that looks like in the run game. But it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the fundamental side of it, right? I mean, it's all. I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with the effort side. It's all the fundamental side, and
that's step one.
It's little things that can get cleaned up, in my opinion.
Wasn't the case, Vince.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a drag there, so I thought Vince was done when I jumped in there. I thought you were done at that point in time.
That's okay.
So let's actually talk about what happened. Now that we've kind of done the whole, hey, they're actually closer than I think. Let's talk about what they did. And first of all, we just got bumped big time. So John A1, we saw your super chat. I remember what it was. I'm going to ask about it here when we get to the end of this conversation, but we're not going to be able to bring it up because it's been booted already. But I do appreciate the super chat. It did not go
always.
So as I look through this, Vince, I've got all these lists of critiques from yesterday. Okay. And these are things we did talk about. And a lot of it's the same issues as before. It's stopping their feet at the point of contact. It's poor angles that come from poor footwork, right? Meaning you're taught on a certain block that, hey, you're going to block that guy's upfield shoulder because on this particular play, if he goes underneath you, that's okay. We don't want him to go over top of us, right? That's the kind of thing. Those are why angles are important. If that guy's going to go in a direction, where are you trying to take him to go? There are things they're doing. Some of it isn't actually, it appears to be what they're taught to do. When they're running inside zone, they turn like this and block out.
And the reason we believe, because it's not how I've ever taught zone blocking, and I've coached offensive line as like a helper. Just a little bit of background, when I was offensive coordinator of the team, the last team that I was coaching with, I didn't have a position group, right? Which was great. I could roam and I could do some different things. I always found myself with the offensive line because if you don't have a good offensive line, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Pay attention to what Notre Dame's doing. But so I always found myself with the offensive line, and we didn't teach this. And we believe they're doing that because they're trying to create run lanes for the running back. Zone scheme does not necessarily create specific run lanes. It's not like when you were in Pop Warner and it's, you're running 24 blast and the two back gets it and you run through the 4 hole. Like
that's a gap scheme.
Yeah.
You're trying to create a gap.
Exactly. And so you stay square, and wherever the gap ends up being, that's the running back has to be patient, puts his foot in the ground, and he goes. That's how you run that, right? The kid with the Steelers, the running back, used to be really, really good at that. He's bounced all around the league. Talking about running back.
Williams?
No, I don't remember. He went to the Jets, and then he went. Anyway, but he used to be a really good zone scheme back because he was very patient in the backfield. He would get 1 foot and he would go. That's the kind of running back that you need. But you don't turn your shoulders like this when you're blocking. That's not how it's taught. But, and you mentioned this when we were talking beforehand, it seems like that's being taught at multiple places, not just at Notre Dame.
So, for example, they're running an inside zone to the right, for example, and it's an inside zone or a mid zone. The right side of the linemen are the ones turning. Okay.
Bell.
Le'Veon Bell. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
And so they'll turn and block. Now, I understand why they're doing that, I think. Inside zone to the right is meant to, when it's run perfectly, it cuts back to the left. We've talked about that. We've done breakdowns on that before at Irish Breakdown. And where I was before, I talked about that a lot. But you don't determine that. You don't force that. That's the problem that I see. And I was always taught in zone, you always kind of wanted to have some level of we're staying square, working together. And even when you're doing a base block, I feel like you can't be in a situation where you're turning your hips because now there is no chance for a bounce. And when Kyron is bouncing, they're able to then just get off those blocks and pursue.
Right.
Because you've done that. So that's a concern. That's a coaching thing that can be corrected if they want to. But then if they don't correct that, then that's fine. That makes those backside blocks even more important. That's why it's so important to figure out a way to handle the backside edge a little bit more effectively. That wasn't as much of an issue yesterday just because of the way Wisconsin plays. They're more of an odd front team. They don't have that edge guy that was screaming off the edge. Plus, Notre Dame was doing a lot of 2 tight ends on the back of the edge, which, you're sacrificing some in the pass game to protect the fact that your line can't block in a run game. That's you're putting Joe Alt in the game and basically saying, hey, we're not going to be as – it's not a coincidence that the pass game has gone down as they've gone more 12 personnel and putting Joe Alt in the game. That's not a knock on Joe Alt. I thought Joe Alt did a decent job yesterday for a true freshman. I thought he, switching jerseys and stuff. I thought he did a solid job yesterday.
Yeah, he did okay.
He played like a freshman. It was some upside.
Absolutely. We do great on a curve to a degree.
Yeah, 100%.
When you're a true freshman, man, I don't expect you to be, an all pro. I don't expect that. So yes, as a true freshman, I thought he handled himself just fine.
One thing that was encouraging to me, Vince, was they were terrible on combo blocks yesterday, but for a different reason. They were getting off combo blocks too early to get to the second level.
Right.
Here's why that encourages me. They recognized what we had been saying the first 3 games, which you are not getting off to the second level in combo
which is
blocks.
a problem.
They worked on it, and the result was a problem in the opposite direction. That's not the direction I want to go. I'm always a believer that you secure the first line first.
Absolutely.
Right? But at least it's a positive. They recognize it's a problem and they're trying to fix it. Now it's just the timing eventually, as you keep at it, will get better and better and better if you're working on it. And I thought that when they stayed on the first level a few times, they actually got decent movement.
They did. I agree.
Against a pretty big Wisconsin front. There were 6 or 7 snaps, especially in the second half, as they kind of were leaning on Wisconsin a little bit more. The holes got a little bit bigger, when Kyron was having to bounce, he was bouncing a little further forward, which allowed him to get to the edge than he was earlier, where he was bouncing 3 yards behind the line. Those were some encouraging things that we saw in the second half. Now it's about, okay, just more reps, more reps, more reps. That's the kind of thing that you can say that's because those are guys still playing together for the first 4 games.
Sure.
Those are the kind of mistakes that I could say early in the year I expected. You know what I mean? And so that, I think, is the fact that they're trying to fix it, for me, was a positive. The last thing that, to me, Vince, is the biggest issue, however, and this is all in a line of staying square, not staying square. They're doing a poor job of staying square with their shoulders, stopping their feet on contact, leading to poor angles, poor timing of combos, and then it all ends with they did not finish at all in the run game yesterday. They do not finish blocks at all. And ultimately, that is why that and the stopping of the feet, those two things go together. And that is why they're getting no push in the run game, in my opinion.
No, that's fair. They coincide, because if you're running your feet until the whistle blows, you're finishing your block. I mean, it one absolutely 100% leads to the other. But when one's not happening, it's very obvious that the other isn't happening either. So I agree with you. When the few times that they did run their feet, they got good movement. Like they reestablished the line of scrimmage, at least on half the line up, which I was encouraged about. And to build on your comment about it's clear that they know that it's a problem they're not getting to the second level. I know it seems like such a small thing, but it's a small thing in the right direction. And look, we're not necessarily searching for little things just to make people feel better. It's legit.
I got no desire to do that.
No, and agreed.
I think they know us well enough to know that we're not here well, you know what? On second thought, I'm not going to bash Jeff Quinn. No, my thoughts on Jeff Quinn are still the same.
They have not
changed.
At
least but our objective is not here to just bash Jeff Quinn just to do it. We're bashing him because that's what we see. This is not a good thing. After 4 games, we shouldn't be talking about, well, at least they recognize that they're not getting off the first level. You know what I mean? That should have been figured out by by fall camp.
Yeah.
But at least it says they're trying. They're trying to fix something.
It's a long season. It's a long season. Yes. There's open.
I thought, in my opinion, Vince, the right side played a little bit more physical in the run game than they had before. They're still awful in the pass game. We'll get to that. But I thought in the run game, at least we saw some potential for that Kane Madden, Josh Lugg side in the run game. Agree or disagree?
When they got combos together, I thought it was pretty effective. The problem was when they had to come off.
Right.
And there's a very specific play. You want to reference that now?
Go for it. Yeah, because this is the one you brought up to me and when we were prepping for the show. So you
so the 4th and 1, and I believe it was early in the second quarter.
Early second, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was the drive where they got their first field goal.
Okay.
Not the one they missed, but the one that they made.
The 52-yarder or whatever it ended up being. So they ended up getting the first down. Great. That was what you wanted to do. You wanted to get the first down. Okay. And if you watch that play, and if I'm not mistaken, they when on the replay, they actually get behind the line, which I love, by the way. And if anybody knows where the press box is at Soldier Field, we're basically in the corner of the end zone. So I've got the end zone view the whole time live, which was beautiful. I love that. I wouldn't mind having that that's where the press box is at Notre Dame Stadium too. But anyway, I digress. So It was a great combo block between Lug and Madden. They got good movement, which moved the line of scrimmage in the right direction, allowed them to get the first down. The problem was, and this is the microcosm of the way the game went, is soon Kane Madden came off, and I will say he didn't come off early on this one. I believe that Lug had that block pretty much squared, okay? But he comes off, he tries to go to the second level, he turns his shoulders, and the guy comes up over the top of him, and because he's turned this way, he can't turn around and rebound and reset and go get that linebacker.
Right.
And that's the guy that made the play.
If you're someone who wants to understand, like, so you hear us say things, okay, well, what do you mean stay square? I would encourage you to go back. That game's up on YouTube.
Yep.
If you DVR'd it or whatever it is you have, I'd encourage you to go back and look at that play. That's a perfect example when you watch Kane Madden of why you stay square. So essentially, because that end was coming in and he's working a combo, what linemen should be taught is you step with power. You give that inside arm to help. If that guy keeps coming, then you keep working across, you overtake him, and then Lug gets to the second level, and Card Williams is bouncing out to your outside, right? You stay square, and then that linebacker comes, which is what he does. You go here and go here.
Right.
And Kyron gets right behind you.
Yep.
That's what they did against Purdue.
On the big long run.
And it worked.
Right.
So that's what we talk about. That's a perfect example if you want to see it, because I think this is a great helper. And I wish that copyright laws didn't limit our ability to do, be able to put those plays up. I really wish we could do that.
Yeah, it would make it so much easier to understand and see.
But that's what I would encourage you to do, to go look at that play early second quarter on that 4th and 1. That's an example of what we're talking about, Vince. But they were bad, but I felt like at least there were some baby steps that say at least it looks like some of these things they're trying to work on.
I would say in the first couple of games, they stay on that double, and it allows the linebacker to come meet Kyron in the hole
and blow him up in the hole.
Pick up that first down.
You're 100% right. That's I didn't even think about that, Vince. That's a great point. That's a great point.
And because Kane Madden came off of it, the linebacker had to go around. He had to go around. The attempt at a block,
and
right?
But Kane whiffed. But to your point, he went around, and so that gave Kyron the room. I didn't even think about that, Vince. Like first 2 games, you're absolutely right. They don't get that first down. That linebacker comes right through the hole, and just Kane doesn't come off, and he blasts it.
Right.
That's a great point. So again, that's a 2-yard gain is progress. But it's
look, they got the first down.
It's set up a score.
It was 4th and 1. That was huge. Right. It was huge because look, if you'd have told me, 4th and 1, they're going to run it. I don't know.
I just feel like dirty even talking about this because I feel like we're trying to explain how 3 freaking positive yards rushing, and your 2 stud running backs going for 39 yards on 20 carries, somehow a step in the right direction. But that's how bad it was the first 3 games.
We are starting so low, like we have set the bar so low that a toddler could waddle over
that. Like, whiffing, but at least making him go around you is a win.
When you say it out loud, it doesn't sound good at all.
I mean that's what we're saying. But to your point though, back to being serious. Your point is, okay, that's still not good, but it's better. Now can you fix the other part? Like, hey, because here's the thing that I'm trying to explain to y'all. If Tommy Rees and Jeff Quinn and John McNulty and Lance Taylor can sit down with Jeff Quinn and say, hey, listen, man, here's the deal. We like what you did there. Guys came off. They worked their feet on the combo. That's the other thing. On that particular combo, Kane was working his feet. To your point that you said earlier.
Absolutely.
What we need you to do, man, is we got to have those boys keeping their shoulders square. We keep getting that movement. Keep that, because what happens is when you turn your shoulders, that's when you either miss the run throughs, you got to come off early because you've got to go back here. Staying square allows you to stay on it. Bam, I'm on you.
Yep.
That's a somewhat easy fix.
It really is.
It can be addressed. And so what's not an easy fix is I'm turning and I'm not seeing the run through.
Right.
That's a hard fix because I have no awareness of what's happening.
Yeah.
So at least that is a positive step in the right direction. But again, a long way to go.
Oh yeah.
But I still feel like these are things that a good coach can do. Here's another thing I want to address. And first of all, we do have a super chat from Matt Baisley. I want to appreciate that. Do y'all post a live schedule? If not, please do love the show. So I'm just going to do this real quick for you, Matt. We don't post a live schedule. We have a consistent live schedule, however.
Correct.
And we will post the shows each day beforehand. But essentially, Matt, we go 12:30 Eastern, Monday to Friday, every day.
Yep.
And our shows have different themes. Saturday is just when we are able to get set up.
It's
after
a post-game show. I mean, it's
right.
You get
so
home.
It just depends on what time the game is over and those type of things. And then Sunday is 8:00 Eastern.
Yep.
So 8:00 Eastern on Sunday, 12:30 Eastern every day the rest of the week, and then Saturday is after the game.
Yep.
So I did
try to stay.
and
try to stay as consistent as possible with that,
right? For this exact reason, so that there can be some consistency.
We appreciate the super chat, man.
Very,
That's
very
awesome.
much. And then we had another one down here that I hope I didn't lose.
I've got it. If you don't, from Tim Patrick.
Yes, Tim Patrick. Hey, Coach D, finally caught y'all live. How's my long lost cousin? So Tim is also a Broncos fan, I believe. So Tim, we're good, and I'm really glad that you're able to catch the show live. And that's why we kind of like doing this one at night too, because there are some people, and on a weekend there's some people that can't watch that.
Sure.
During the week they get a chance to watch. So we appreciate you, and I appreciate the super chat. And I'm doing great. I'm doing great, cuz. Doing great. So Vince, finishing off this run game stuff.
Yeah.
If they can, this is the point we'll make. If they can just improve a couple of these things, I do believe the backs are good enough to make. Because somebody asked me earlier, why do the backs seem to be better when the backup quarterbacks go in the game? It was a fair question. And I said, well, I don't think they were necessarily better. When Tyler Buckner goes in the game, they were better because Tyler Buckner is the run game when Tyler Buckner goes in the game. Yesterday, when Drew Pine got in the game, I felt like by that point in time, they were kind of leaning a little bit on Wisconsin more, which I thought was a positive.
Sure.
I don't think that was because of Drew Pine.
No.
I think honestly,
it's a happy coincidence.
And well, I think part of it is because I do think when a backup quarterback goes in a game, there is something in your mindset that says, okay, we got to step up and have his back. There is just that an alert level that goes up. Yeah. Which is sometimes why you see a backup quarterback come in the game. You're like, wow, the offense is really clicking with him. Yeah. A lot of times that's because everybody kind of knows they have to raise their game.
And I will say this, and I think I mentioned it in yesterday's show, but Pine is a very well-respected kid on this team. He's the hype man on offense if you're not talking about Kyron Williams, okay? Right. And so these guys want to play for him. And not that they don't want to play for Cone, because they do. But
they also want to play for him, right?
They also want to play for Pine, and they want to play hard for Pine, and they know Pine is going to bust his butt back there and try to make whatever play he can make as well. So this is a pretty tight team, and it's a great quarterback room, which I think is huge. And you can see it on the practice field. These guys clearly get along, and they clearly get along with the other position groups as well. And believe me, that has not always been the case at Notre Dame. Right. And so I just want to make that very, very clear that Pine and Cone and Buckner, it's a great quarterback room. Great room.
But so the other thing too is Kyron didn't actually perform better. He had 9 carries for like 21 yards or 27 yards, I think is what it was. 3 yards a carry, which is, better than the 1 point whatever he was doing under before. But 3 of those runs that went for 6 yards were him just making a play that wasn't there.
Sure.
There is still some of that. My point being is that if they can clean up just a couple of these things, this is an example. What we're talking about here, this is the reason we're part of the reason we're having this conversation is to point out that this line doesn't have to be last year's line. This line doesn't have to be 2017's line. With the receivers they have and the backs they have, they don't need to blow people 8 yards off the ball. Get a body on a body. And I guess the point that I'm making is, Vince, is they took a small baby step towards being closer to being able to get a body on a body. I truly believe the type of running backs they have, even against a team like Wisconsin, who does have one of the best rushing defenses in the country, if they can just get a body on a body, these running backs are going to make plays. Because yesterday, there was a couple times when Kane, and this leads to the question about, why were they better? I don't think it was related to Drew Pine. I think that was more of a coincidence of the timing, although I did mention the one aspect of that. But the thing about it is they were starting to do a better job of getting a body on a body. Now, they weren't getting movement much. They were getting a tad at times. They weren't necessarily getting movement. What was going on is they were just getting a body on a body, which allowed Kyron to say, okay, let me find a hole. And he was rushing for 6 and 7. And the thing about Kyron and Chris Tyree is they're capable of, it just takes that one play where you get a body on a body that they crease that first level and they're gone.
Right.
Especially Tyree. But Kyron can be more of just the consistent runner. And we saw that from a defense that last year in 2020 ranked 5th in the nation in rushing defense. In 2019, they ranked 6th in rushing defense. This is a team that's got a pretty good rush defense. Was 3rd in 2017, 3rd in 2016, 4th in 2015. And so now the numbers were awful yesterday, right? 39 yards on 39 yards on 20 carries. The point is, however, is that was 39 yards on 20 carries with them not playing well. Right. The point is there's a jump there to be had if they can simply do body on a body. And even though their grades are still going to be bad when I release their grades, there was at least a small hint of progress.
Right.
In that regards.
Look, it's not going the other way. I
think there was also some progress in pass protection yesterday.
I will agree
relative
with that.
to what they were, not relative to where they need to be.
No,
go ahead, Vince, with that.
Yeah. So as I was watching this, there were absolutely times in the pass game where there was a clean pocket or a cleaner pocket, a cleanish pocket, right? A pocket that is clean enough for a quarterback to maneuver into, to operate out of, and more so than there has been in the first 3 games. So to me, again, that's progress. Is it where it needs to be? Of course not. Mm-hmm. Cone can't get sacked that many times. There can't be that many sacks in the game. I mean, they had
technically
6 sacks.
7, right? Like they said 6, but they counted one on Drew Pine as a scramble, even though I thought it was a sack. I actually thought it was more than that because I did a little quick video on the message board today where I put the 6 sacks of Jack Cone on there. And they were, so I think one of them they counted as the red zone one early where he kind of runs out and falls down. They counted as a run, not a sack.
Well, where he tripped over his own guy.
Mm-hmm. They counted that as a run, not a sack.
Interesting. Well, I mean, technically he didn't get sacked. I mean, but it's the same difference.
But the point that you're making continues. Yes, they're giving up too many sacks, and we did a video at irishbreakdown.com that people can look at where we put that video up where. There was one of those sacks I thought was on Jack, sort of. He was pressured on all of them. There was somebody coming on all of them.
Right.
But to your point, he has to handle that a little better.
Agreed. And
there was
he's getting shell-shocked.
Yes, there were 2 plays in particular where the pressure came, the line didn't do a good job, but they at least gave him enough of a pocket to where he should have been able to climb and throw.
Right.
That's what you're saying. And so the improvement is there, Vince. But to your point, I don't think Jack necessarily recognized that because and here's the reason I'll say that. And you tell me if you agree with this, because we talked about this before, because you made that same comment to me. And at first I kind of cringed when I heard it, because I'm looking at it from a quarterback's point of view.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with your premise. But I think when you say that, it then says, well, okay, well, then it was Jack Cohn's fault. That's the immediate response. But they did better after the first few drives. They cleaned it up after the first few drives. I thought, and part of it was the interior was better.
They weren't getting pushed back into his face as much as they were against Purdue.
Yes. And the first couple of series. I mean, the first sack of the game or the second sack of the game.
The second
Zeke
one.
Correll just gets driven right into
it just collapsed into his face.
Literally Zeke Correll sacked Jack Cohn on that play.
Right.
With his back. I mean, that's how bad it was. That wasn't happening a whole lot after that. But by that time, Jack's like, here we go again.
Yeah, right.
And that's where he's got to, as much as you can understand it, you still have to be able to say, I get it, but you can't. You can't see that. And so that's an area where I felt like they cleaned up after that drive, which again is a good sign. It's a good sign. It's a baby step in the right direction. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden they've arrived and they're going to lock down Myjai Sanders next week. Not what I'm saying, but at least it was a step in the right direction.
It absolutely was. The issues for me when it comes to pass blocking is, again, I think it's a bit of a communication problem. There was one where two guys came at Tosh Baker at the same time, and Andrew Kristofic was playing left guard, and he went inside. Kristofic went inside, left Tosh all by himself. He can't block two guys. It's just not going to happen. And so he got sacked, right? And he gave up a sack. There's other times where Tosh allows the guy to go inside because I think he thinks there's going to be help inside, and it's not there. Not.
Right.
So is that a coaching thing? Is that a communication thing with the offensive line? I'm not 100% sure because I'm not in the room, right? But it's when it happens over and over again, that's when it starts to worry me. It's not like Tosh is making good contact and the guy is just spinning inside. It's immediate. So that tells me that Tosh thinks he has help inside. Sometimes there was a running back there to help him.
Way too much communication problems.
Yes.
That's the point. That's the point.
That's the point. Absolutely.
It's the same reason why they're turning corners loose.
Right.
There's a communication problem that has not been corrected yet. But I felt like with the way that Wisconsin pass rushes, they're more of kind of a 3-down pass rush with a guy coming from the edge or from a linebacker. I felt like they were better. Their scheme was better suited for Notre Dame to pick it up. And they kind of did. Now, I counted 17 pressures of Jack Cohn on 36 dropbacks.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And that's about 40. I'm trying to.
Well, no, 17 over 35.
47.2%. Now, a couple of those pressures were secondary pressures, right? A guy coming on a secondary move. Those don't hit as quickly.
Yeah.
There were also some plays where he got rid of the ball so quickly there was no opportunity for pressure to come.
Sure.
So those things kind of wash each other out.
There's
still too many pressures coming. However, in this game, more of those pressures were coming later than they were early in the game and during the season where they were just coming now. Like first couple sacks, he was getting to the top of his drop and there were people in his face.
There's nothing he could do.
Nothing you can do about that. A couple of the others, and this is the play you were talking about, it was around the 6:30 mark of the second quarter.
Yeah.
And Jack drops back. Lug just gets beat on outside badly, but he got a body and Jack
and he pushed him outside.
Pocket, right. Yeah. Jack steps into the pocket and then resets his feet. And he was kind of looking at the line. You could see he was kind of looking at the line. If he slides, and as you slide, you've got to be ready to slide, set, and throw. And he's got Avery Davis coming over the middle.
Because it was two defenders, and then Avery Davis split them, and they were going the opposite direction.
Now, the concern is Jarrett Patterson was kind of sinking into him.
He was.
That's a technique thing that they've got to clean up this week. If you don't have anyone to block, don't sink.
Right.
That's a little thing. And I think that's something that linemen have a tendency to do is there's nobody here. That means they're past me. I got to go back. That's a natural tendency.
Sure.
They've got to clean that up. Step to someone because you've got a quarterback climbing.
Yeah.
That's a little thing that, and that kind of happened on that play, but Jack's got to be able to step up and do that. Or if he doesn't want to step up and throw, then he needs to step up and run.
Well, so you make a good point. So when you talk about we're talking about the center, right? And he had nobody to block.
If that guy's right in front of you.
Right. And in the past, when Ian Book was the quarterback and the center would do that, he would come off and he would go to help somebody else. That's when the pocket goes like this, and that's when Ian Book would run, right? Because it's wide open in front of him.
The times when he should have run. Those are the times.
100%. Yeah, that's not an Ian Book knock. What I'm saying is people.
No, I'm saying people are like, oh, we need Ian Book back because he was such a great runner.
Yeah, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. But when it opens like that and they're in man coverage and there's nobody spying the quarterback, yeah, man, take off. I have no problem with that, right? So, but that's what
you're a couple times on like one drive, and then he didn't do it again. But
he got hit pretty hard both times. So maybe that was part of it.
I get it. It's like I get hit enough in the pocket. I don't need to get hit running out of the pocket too.
He made one move in the middle of the field.
Here's the thing for Jack. I understand as a quarterback that played for a bad offensive line in college. I get it.
Sure.
But you still have to beat. You still can't lose your technique because they're losing theirs.
Right.
You still have to. You can't develop bad habits. And so now what that means for Tommy Rees is if Jack's going to play this weekend. And Kelly said it, but honestly, anyone that's ever dealt with any kind of ankle or any kind of the x-rays may come back fine, but you still can't put any pressure on it.
Right.
Because that's what happened in the game. They brought him back because the x-rays were fine, and he tried to throw on it, and he's like, nope, can't. So we're going to have to see how he heals this week. If he plays again, that's something where Tommy Rees can point to him and say, hey, Jack, you've got to be prepared for this. Now, if you step in and you're getting hit, then you protect the ball and you go down, right? But you can't develop these bad habits because of what's happening up front.
That's the worst thing that could happen to this offense right now is that he continues on this path and gets more and more shell-shocked and more and more like,
that's my big concern.
Yeah, me too. As much as I love Jack Cohn.
He missed some throws in this game, just like last week, that he made in the first 2 games.
Correct.
The one play where Kevin Austin has opened up the left sideline, that's a throw he hit in the first couple games. I mean, he hit him perfectly. But you can see it. He's rushing his technique. He's rushing his mechanics because he thinks his internal clock is sped up and he can't slow it down.
That's what happens when you don't have protection. I mean,
that's the same thing's going to happen if Drew Pine. I mean, that's
right.
It's not a Jack Cohn thing. It's
correct.
All the quarterbacks are going to have that issue.
Right.
Because Jack wasn't having that problem in the first game either, which is why he looked so good in the first game and parts of the second game. So when you look at it, Vince, to me, that was something that there were guys there open in this game. Jack's got to do a better job of not allowing that to happen. And you could see that we talked a little bit about it yesterday. I thought schematically we saw some adjustments from Tommy Rees.
Agreed.
Still want to see screens, still want to see jets, still want to see reverses. Be more creative with Braden Lindsey. That's the biggest thing for me. Be more creative with how you use Braden Lindsey. Go back and watch some 2019 film, okay? I mean, here's how Braden Lindsey scored, 5 touchdowns in 2019, I believe, right? Scored on a look screen. He scored on his first touchdown was a look screen against New Mexico. Scored on a reverse against USC. Scored on a jet sweep. No, Navy was before, so he scored on a post route against Navy. Then he scored on a jet sweep against Boston College. And there was one more touchdown that I'm missing. I believe he had 5 touchdowns that year, correct? But that's 4 of them. But your
point is taken, though. I mean,
yes, you've got to use him in different ways, in my opinion. And so that's something that I do want to see him be a little bit more. Oh, he only had 4 touchdowns, so I've got all 4 of them. So screen, jet sweep, reverse, post route.
Right.
Scored long touchdowns on all 4 of them.
Right.
You've got to use him more than just that. And then that's going to make him more effective on that deep stuff because you can't just be prepared for the jets and the posts and the out cuts. That's all he's doing right now is go routes, post routes, and out cuts. That's all Braden Lindsey's doing right now.
And everything that you just said, all 4 of those touchdowns, 3 of the 4 will help your offensive line.
Yes. That's a great point. So, explain why.
Well, because they're quick hitters.
Because I think yesterday was a perfect example, especially against a team that's big and physical.
Right. They're quick hitters. And so the offensive line doesn't need to hold up for 3-4 seconds. A reverse, he's out of the box like that. Right.
Yes.
And the jet sweep, he's out of the box like that. You don't have to worry about. You may have to get a hook, an end, or something along those lines. But he's so fast, you may not even have to do that.
Go watch the jet sweep against Boston College.
Yeah. So there you go.
The line didn't block a soul on the left side line. It wasn't bad technique. It was like there just was nobody. There's
nobody to block.
They didn't impact that play at all. Tommy Tremble had a block, and that's it.
Right. And a look
the
screen
line didn't block a soul.
Yeah, a look screen. You're betting on your skill guys to block.
Right.
So outside of the post, that helps your offensive line. Right. And now
teams got to be thinking about this more than just this.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
That's where and that's my one big issue with Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees calls a game like he's in the NFL. You can't do that stuff in the NFL. You can't run reverses and jet sweeps all day in the NFL. It just, at least I don't think
too fast. Defenders are too fast.
You have to
Yeah.
And this is college though, right? And you can do that stuff in college. And I think he's a pro style guy. I think he views himself as that, kind of like Chip Long viewed himself as a pro style guy, but Chip also understood this is college football, and when I have a guy like Braden Lindsey, I can run jets and reverses and things like that then set up other things.
Sure.
And I'd like to see Coach Rees do that. That's one of my concerns with the makeup of the offensive staff is Lance Taylor, who I think is a really smart coach, And he is a guy that coached under David Shaw, who is a pro-style coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he coached in the NFL. John McNulty's been mostly a pro coach. This is college football.
Right.
That's my one knock is
I get that.
Is you can't just ask, and then you're like, well, he doesn't catch the ball real well. You know what? He ain't dropping jet sweeps and reverses. Okay.
Well, and here's what I will say. And this is what gives me a little bit of hope. During one of the practices that we were at, they had a session where they were just working screens. Okay. And the action that they were running off of those screens is exactly what you were just calling for. So we know that it's there because you can't run a screen off of that kind of action unless you're running that action in the first place.
Right.
Okay. And so that gives me hope that maybe, just maybe, they're kind of holding it back at this point.
I mean, you hold it back, but Wisconsin was the game. At some point, I mean, who are you holding it back for? Alabama, the college football playoff?
Look, Cincinnati's the best team on your schedule.
Yes, but I still feel like Wisconsin is the team that was most susceptible to that.
Okay.
I mean, Cincinnati game doesn't matter if you don't beat Wisconsin.
Right. Fair
and
enough.
Your defense and special teams outscored you. Okay. I get what you're saying. I just feel like you're wishful thinking.
You're not wrong. You're not. And I said that. I believe me. I said it. But I've seen them practice it. Is what I'm saying, and so I know that it's there. And it looked. I was like, oh, I like the way that looks.
But
you know what I mean?
The point, though, I think that's on point, Vince, is it protects the line. It takes some of the run game pressure off the line. Because right now, Notre Dame's generating big plays in two ways, and they both put pressure on the line. Deep throws and run game.
Sure.
That's how Notre Dame has made their big plays, with the exception of one screen, which also required the line to go block. That's where the big plays have come from, with one exception, and that was the wheel, the little quick wheel to Tyree against Toledo
with Buckner.
Yeah. Everything else puts pressure on the line. A jet and reverse don't put a lot of pressure on the line.
Right.
Look screens don't put a lot of pressure on the line. Those are the things that I think take some of that, and then that makes them better. I think if teams aren't so focused on coming down, because right now Notre Dame is downhill play action. That's their offense. You know, they've only run a quick pitch with Tyler Buckner in the game. And don't run it with Jack Cohn.
Yeah, they did it twice. Yeah, same play.
Do a quick jet, because here's the thing: if they over pursue to that, then you run that sucker the next time, and you have Chris Tyree flipping it to Braden Lindsey.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so that college level creativity is something that I want to see more of. I think he's got a lot of NFL pro style creativity, which you would understand based on the makeup of this coaching staff. But I need to see more. So that was my one criticism of. But I thought they used motions more effectively. That one time they brought Joe Wilkins in, which is what we've been asking for, right? Don't just line up and play. You bring Joe Wilkins in motion, send him on a quick wheel route, bang a back shoulder to him. Great play design. Loved it. There was more over the middle stuff. Some of it they hit, some of it they didn't. That's part of it. But you've got the read that Drew Pine made to Kevin Austin working back towards the middle. You hit a seam route, a hash seam twice in the game for 20-plus yard gains. First time was to Avery Davis up the seam. Great read and throw by Jack Cohn. That was before he got shook, in my opinion. Then you had, obviously, Drew Pine made that same read later in the game to Michael Mayer. So you saw some of that. They were doing things where they were just getting Michael Mayer right over the center. That and this is to your point, Vince, if pressure comes, if the backers come, Mayer's just sitting right there behind him and you can check it down. Missed it a couple times, but it was at least there. And as you said, they had some checkdowns, including one time where Jack saw it. I think there was one play where the one play where Jack got out of the pocket and he dumps it off to Chris Tyree. You and I disagreed a little bit on whether or not he could have or shouldn't thrown that ball, but the fact is he got out of the pocket, dumped it off to Chris Tyree, and he picked up the first down.
Sure.
So there was more of that, and so that's encouraging. But there's still an element missing, and that element missing is using your speed. And if you don't want to run it to Braden Lindsey, then run it to Chris Tyree. I'm gonna reiterate. We said yesterday we're not gonna talk about it much because we already talked. We don't want to repeat the same things in both shows, but it was more glaring after watching this game that Chris Tyree needed more than 3 touches in this football game.
Yep.
And he's another guy that, look at the speed he showed in that kick return. You don't think you want to try to get a couple jets and reverses with that speed? If they play it, they play it. But in order to play it, they're going to leave themselves vulnerable to something else.
Exactly.
And that's the point.
Yep.
So those are some of the things, Vince. Anything else that you noticed? I thought the receivers are still a little bit inconsistent catching the ball and finishing off their routes. But they were a little better than they were the previous week, which is a positive.
I agree. And I thought Avery Davis, not Avery Davis, Kevin Austin did a good job of bouncing back. I was really proud of him. Not that I didn't expect that, but it was great to see. So I really, really like that. I thought, Michael Mayer made the most of the opportunities that he had.
That one drop, we tried to one-hand it. He's got to bring that in. But yes, other than that.
But yeah, they were clearly trying to take him away, and I thought that he did a good job. Look, I'm always going to be looking at the wide receivers and things of that nature. And I thought that as a group, I thought they played okay. Again, some of the things we had issues.
Is really good.
And he's going to continue. He's going to be, I think,
just so steady.
Yeah.
He's just 4 catches, 55 yards.
Right.
Here's one thing we didn't talk about Kevin Austin that I didn't notice until I looked at the stats and watched the film again. He had 6 catches yesterday for 76 yards.
Mm-hmm.
5 of his 6 catches either went for touchdowns or moved the chains on a third down. Most receiver catches go for first downs, but it's the money downs that matter.
Sure.
He converted 3 third downs and had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And one of his third downs set up the touchdown. If he doesn't make that low catch on that low throw from Pine, then they don't get to that. They don't hit the seam route of play later, and they don't hit him on a touchdown, Kevin Austin touchdown 2 plays after the seam route.
Right.
So he to bounce back the way he did mentally, what he did yesterday physically doesn't surprise us. He made plays like that the first 2 games.
Sure.
But a young kid still kind of learning to play.
Yep.
Having the kind of, I don't think people understand how bad he was last week.
Yeah. Right. He knows.
Mentally bad. But
he knows.
He very clearly he knew after what he said after the game. But to see him bounce back so quickly shows a level of maturity that we like. Avery Davis is a key. They're just going to – I think Braden Lindsey's kind of, to me, that Braden Lindsey and Chris Tyree being used on other than just vertical stuff is the missing link schematically. They've done some of the things, we've talked about, get more stuff over the middle, get more levels. They did some of that Saturday. We saw some of that. More screens. We're seeing more screens to the backs. That's the final component to me that's missing, in my opinion.
All right, so before we move on to defense, we do have some super chats I want to make sure that we get to. Corey D, I've been sitting on this one for a while. He says, Vince, the environment at Soldier Field looked awesome. In Chicago, the crowd looked about 50-50 in terms of ND Wisconsin fans. Yeah, and what they did, because it was a neutral site game, they literally had half the stadium was red and half the stadium was blue and gold and green, which was awesome. And you could see a couple of sprinkles of the opposite in the other section or whatever, but it was pretty much 50-50 right down the line, and it was really a cool atmosphere. I will admit that. It was a much better atmosphere than when Miami played Notre Dame at Soldier Field, because Miami's so freaking far away, right? If you're going to play at Soldier Field, I did like the fact you had 2 Midwest teams. They could both drive to the stadium. They both showed up, and it was fantastic. So I agree with you, Corey. I hope it came across on TV, because it absolutely came across live and in person. I missed the other one, the $10 one. Do you by chance have it?
I think I still have that. Yep.
Yes. Garrett Knutson, thank you very much. He said this one came in when we were talking about Cone. He said, I'd argue that if your quarterback has concrete feet, it doesn't matter how good your offensive line is.
I would agree with him. I don't think Jack Cone has concrete feet, but I agree with what he just said.
Sure.
I don't think that applies to anyone that plays in Notre Dame, but I agree with what he said.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. He scrambled a few times. Got out of the pocket.
Jack Cone's not Ian Book. He's not Brandon Wimbush. He's not Deshaun Kaiser.
And he never will be.
He's still not the problem.
Right.
His feet aren't the problem. The offensive line is the problem, and how he's reacting to the offensive line is the problem.
Absolutely.
That's where Jack is messing up. His feet aren't the problem. His feet weren't a problem in the opener. They weren't a problem when he was leading a game-winning drive against Toledo. They weren't a problem when he went 6 of 9 for 137 yards and a touchdown in the second half of last week's game, and it should have been 7 of 9 for about 176 yards and 2 touchdowns if Braden Lindsey doesn't drop a ball that he placed perfectly on him, right? So Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. We got one more super chat here from Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Hemmerling.
Well, no, I was looking at at first I thought it was like an Eisenhower emoji, or the profile picture there. Anyway, he says, grateful for you. Is there a sign returners have to make on kickoff returns saying they aren't returning the ball, been out of coaching too long? So you can do a couple things. You can fair catch it like they do on punt returns. You can just let it go to the end zone. If it bounces into the end zone, you're clearly not, they always put their hands out like that, then that's obviously not a return. Go ahead.
They do a thing like this with the returner, because what I think Notre Dame is doing is, as the return men are coming back, they're trying to find out where Tyree's going to be.
Sure.
Because that's going to impact the angle, kind of where you go. And as they're working back, if it's clear of his head, he'll go like this, and they know it's not coming.
Yeah, he goes straight out, and he just.
So sometimes you'll see where Tyree, the ball goes to his head, and like 5 dudes of the other team, like, you're like, did anybody block anybody? No, they stopped blocking when he went like this, right? Which they should, because then you hit somebody, and who knows,
you get a penalty
or something like that. So you see this, just he's not going to get hit. The ball's not coming to him. Run. So there is a sign that they do. And thank you for the super chat, by the way.
That's awesome, Jason. Thank you. I want to hit this real quick. Michael says, Vince, how'd you get home so quickly? Soldier Field is a pain to get out of. Well, man, I don't know what I did. I got in the car and I drove right out, and I was on the highway. I didn't get stopped.
Clearly some of those cops or Irish Breakdown fans like, hey, that's Vince. He's got a podcast to do.
Let
him get home.
I got out way faster than I got in. Let's put it that way. So it was actually really awesome. So defense, Brian. Let's talk some defense. Let's turn this show on its head, baby, because we're going to get super positive, because my takeaway from watching the defense is they were better than I thought they were in person, to be perfectly honest with you. And again, I will tell people that the way that we do things at Irish Breakdown, since I was live, I was kind of watching the all 22, if you will. So I was watching kind of the receivers and the defensive backs, et cetera. And Brian was paying attention to the line. So when I went back and watched now I'm paying attention to the line, and holy schmolies. Notre Dame's front seven, specifically the line, played out of their minds. They controlled the line of scrimmage the entire game, and it allowed not only the linebackers to make plays at the line of scrimmage, but the defensive line was making plays at the line of scrimmage. I was just enjoying watching the defense on film. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. And I'll shovel it off to you, Brian, but I tell you what, the front seven just played just so well. They played the way that you and I have been talking about the potential of this front playing. They played that way.
There's a comment that somebody made that I want to kind of bring up that relates to the previous topic and this topic. Brian Dembo said, is the offense in week 4 in the same place the defense was in week 1?
Ooh.
And my answer would be no. Because here's the difference. In week 1, and this leads back to this talk. The thing that you and I said after the first 2 games when there were some people panicking about the defense. So look, they're like 5 or 6 plays away from shutting down the last 2 opponents. Notre Dame's offensive line is not 5 or 6 plays away. There are only 5 or 6 good plays, and then the rest are bad. So no, they're not. And the other thing is you had a bunch of guys in a new system, and it was a coach getting to learn his new guys and all that kind of stuff. Jeff Quinn's been coaching these linemen since they've been at Notre Dame, with the exception of one guy, that's Josh Luck, who he coached, who played 1 year under Harry Easton and then now 4 under Jeff Quinn. So it's a little different circumstances, but what it shows is, to me, this shows what good coaching can do, however, because where his question is coming from, and it's a very good point, and a very good question, is the defense had problems the first couple games because they were making mistakes. They weren't playing fundamentally sound. There were some things they were doing schematically that we didn't think necessarily fit what they should be doing.
Right.
And each week they got better and better and better because, number one, Marcus Freeman got to know his players more. They got to know him better, but they clearly, the preparation that group shows to stop what the other team is doing is so good. Yesterday, the reason yesterday was such a good performance, they didn't have a ton of tackles for loss. I think they had like 4 or 5.
Not even that many, I don't think.
They only had 1 sack the whole game. Even though they don't credit them for a sack, but they got a sack because the strip by Jason Adamiola of Graham Mertz was a sack. It even says it in the play-by-play sack, but I don't know why they don't count it as a sack in the stat sheet. Whatever. It is what it is. But they weren't as disruptive as they've been. What made this such a good performance is this is one of the best 11 guys doing their job really hard that I've ever seen. That's coaching and talent. That's what coaching plus you got really good players is supposed to look like. One of the things I keep reading, and I read today on ESPN, and I saw it on one of the CBS, and there's an SI article that wrote about this, and it drives me nuts, is, they're not real talented, but they're scrapping, finding a way to win. If you're watching this Notre Dame defense and your takeaway is they're not supremely talented.
Are you serious?
Yes. This isn't one of Brian Kelly's most talented teams. What in the heck are you watching?
Are you kidding me? That is such a terrible take.
Extremely talented football team. And there are some that are saying, I think somebody on the message board, I forget. So, look, Cam Hart's a future NFL player. He said, Kyle Hamilton's an NFL player. There's dudes playing linebacker going to be playing the NFL. There's a lot of dudes on the defensive line that are going to be playing the NFL.
Yeah.
But there are some dudes that won't be NFL players that are just really good college players. And yesterday, it wasn't 11 guys doing their job. It was like 23.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and I'm really going to sit here and count as you're talking about how many guys they played yesterday. And I can't think of a single guy that other than we talked about Clarence Lewis. And Clarence Lewis had about like 4 or 5 bad plays. But he also had some good plays yesterday.
Right.
Too.
Well, he had more opportunities to be bad because they kept picking on him.
Right. And his bad was playing too off on a curl route, biting on a double move. Some things he's got to be better at, but he also had some plays. I mean, he helped, So again, his bad was he didn't play. He made some mistakes, right? But they didn't prove super costly. Jack Cohn made a big mistake biting in on that backside seam by the tight end. But Jack Cohn made up for it about 10 times in that game.
Kaiser.
Why do I keep saying Jack Cohn?
I don't know.
You did Jack Cohn playing Rover?
You did it yesterday, too.
I did. I don't know why. Too many flipping Jacks. Okay, I can deal with one Jack at a time, okay?
It's a good thing another one transferred then, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, if Jack Lamb was still here, I'd be totally screwed. But Jack Kaiser, gets beat early. It's going to happen, right? But what do you do about it after the fact?
Yeah.
That's what I liked, Vince.
I don't know, pick six?
I'd say so. But there were so many plays before that where Jack
100%. I was being hyperbolic. But they were making plays all day long. All day long. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 guys. It was Howard Cross made play in the backfield. Jason Adamiola had multiple plays in the backfield.
Jacob Lacey,
the interior guy. Let me just say this. Everybody was freaking out because why is his name
Kurt Hinish?
Thank you.
At least I got the Jack part right. Come on, Vince.
I know, right? Seriously. You're sending me some negative vibes here, buddy.
It's my fault.
I'm blaming you. No.
That's fair.
But they really stepped up in the interior when they knew Kurt Hinish wasn't going to be there, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's why they did it, but what I'm saying is their play stepped up, and nobody who watched that game, if you've never watched a Notre Dame game, you wouldn't have realized that the starting nose wasn't playing, right?
Who's a good football player?
Yeah, absolutely. They don't bring him back for
He's
a 6th year.
Only defensive lineman that's more than 280 pounds. Do you realize that?
I did not realize that, but
of the guys in the rotation, they have guys. I mean, Gabriel Rubio's bigger than that. Aiden Keanu is bigger than that. But of the guys that played yesterday, he's the only one that weighed. Jason Adamiola was their biggest defensive lineman yesterday, weight wise, 280 against Wisconsin, who averaged 312 across the board.
Exactly, absolutely correct. And so anyway, the interior played amazing. Foskey played great. I thought Myron played great. I thought Justin played great. And Justin was making plays not on the line. He was making plays out in space that I thought was impressive, right? Because he only started playing Viper in fall camp. He was a big end until then. And so that is quite the learning curve to be able to go out there and play in space. So look, I was very impressed, and I know you were counting. What number did you come up with guys that
I have 20 so far? But there's a couple like I'm not sure. Like did Did KJ Wallace play on defense at all yesterday? I don't remember seeing him. There's just a couple, but yeah, I think 20 is what I have. I have 5 defensive tackles, 4 defensive ends, so 9 defensive linemen. I saw, I'm sorry, 21. I forgot Bo Bauer.
Oh, yeah. I
have Jack Kaiser, Drew White, J.D. Bertrand, Isaiah Pryor, and Bo Bauer at linebacker. So that's 5 linebackers. I have the 3 safeties, Griffith, Hamilton, and DJ Brown. And then 4 corners, Hart, Lewis, Bracey, and Ramon Henderson.
Did Ramon play? Okay, I didn't see Ramon.
Played.
Okay.
Yeah, he played. He was in their nickel.
Okay.
So that's 21 guys. And I mean, it's just like everybody was playing together. It was great team football. Here's the other thing too, is they had stuff that we hadn't seen all year.
Exactly.
I mean, they had calls, they had sub packages. There were times where they took Cam Hart off the field and they had Tariq Bracey and Clarence Lewis on the field in their base defense in certain packages. They had times where they had Jordan Patel as a 4th linebacker, like not as a sub for Isaiah Foskey. They were on the field together.
Yes, correct.
And 4-4 look.
And I think you're going to see more of that with him being at linebacker and on the defensive line.
I don't think we'll see it with him in a 4-4 look anymore. At least because nobody runs the ball like them.
Correct.
But
I agree
perhaps
with that.
Still in the 4-3, where maybe,
I'm just saying you're going to see him in space, and you're also going to see him on the line. That's all I meant by that.
Okay. No, I thought you were saying with Foskey on the field as well. Foskey. That I don't think. Yeah, that was on your end. One of your kids is.
I think somebody died upstairs. I don't.
You might want to go check on that real quick.
Yeah, I got a podcast to do. It's all good.
But the point being, they threw different looks at Wisconsin, and Wisconsin could never figure it out.
Right.
And they were aggressive, but it was the most controlled game plan that we'd seen.
It wasn't guys just running around like crazy people at all.
And it wasn't like a lot of blitzes. It was clear they were run blitzing more than they were pass blitzing, right? Which meant gap control and penetration.
Exactly.
They weren't, like you said, they weren't blowing Wisconsin off the line. They were beating with speed.
Sorry.
You all right?
I apologize. My daughter just texted me. She goes, I'm so sorry. I accidentally ran into a door. I'm sorry. I should not have laughed about that. Not the text I was anticipating.
That's messed up, dude.
Yeah.
Which one?
Not
Buddy?
Ella.
Okay.
She was practicing her round-offs, she said. Hey, my house is a gym.
And that'll do it for tonight's show, everybody.
Thank you!
Vince's kids got their athleticism from someone else. But I don't even have a clue where I was.
I'm sorry. I totally just ruined the whole show.
Anyway.
Welcome to a live show, everybody.
Great game planning from Marcus Freeman in the defense. I thought it was a very control. This is a team that's been so aggressive, but for him to show the discipline to say, hey, look, that's not what's needed against Wisconsin. And here's why. Right. Why was it not needed against Wisconsin? Because if you're too aggressive against Wisconsin and they get a body on a body, it's gone.
Absolutely
it's
correct.
Gone. And it was a controlled aggression where you had guys protecting. I thought the way that they used Kyle Hamilton was great. Somebody had said, I didn't see Kyle Hamilton a lot. It's because of how they used him. They used him at times as we talked about, as a center fielder to, hey, you sure you want to throw this play action shot down the field? And then at other times they said, okay, you go cover Jake Ferguson, which is what you talked about wanting to see. And there were times where basically they were saying, we're not going to use Kyle to make a play on the ball. We're going to use Kyle to make sure that the ball doesn't go here.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they knew the ball wasn't going to go there, and then they could play it other ways. It was such a great game plan. It was great execution of that game plan. I thought man, it's so past time to put respect on Mike Elson's name. I mean, he had nine different guys playing yesterday, missing one of their captains, and we're seeing great technique, great leverage, playing with the proper angles. I thought the job of the ends coming down and crashing, like we talked about needing to do, prevented Wisconsin from getting their stretches going.
Yep.
Everything that we said, if this happens, we think the defense can play well, they did yesterday.
What was great was those backside ends that were crashing down hard. where that's exactly what was happening to Notre Dame on the offensive side. It was nice to see the roles reversed a little bit, and Notre Dame was doing that to them.
Yeah, and just taking on those lead blockers and those kickouts and those wraps and just closing up holes. And it's like they had to work so hard to get gains of 6 and 7 and 5. And it's like, the backs were making cuts behind the line.
And that's what we said going into this game. The way you shut down a run game, number one, you stop them on first down, which we talked about, but then you move the line of scrimmage backwards because then it forces the guy to make a cut in the backfield and you have more time to get your guys to rally to the football. And they did that all day long.
So what usually happens against Wisconsin, Vince, is the way that they play is the running back will get kind of like 4 or 5 yards past the line of scrimmage or past the offensive lineman. And it's an 8-9 yard gain because by the time he gets through the line, they're 2-3 yards downfield.
Yep.
What was happening a lot yesterday was he was getting 3, 4, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, and they were 2 and 3 yard gains because they were just getting so much movement that Wisconsin could not get the push, and they were pushing Wisconsin back because leverage is so. And this is what we talk about that kind of relates to the offensive line. Leverage wins these battles. Speed and leverage can beat size and power if you use it correctly, and Marcus Freeman and Mike Elson absolutely used it correctly yesterday.
Right.
And he said, hey, look, we don't have Kurt Hinish. Now, here's the good thing is they knew all week they weren't going to have Kurt Hinish. So they got a little bit of a break that that he was ruled out so early.
Right. We knew it well in advance, but
the danger can be, hey, we're going to practice like we think we have Kurt. But if we don't, they were able to practice all week. We don't have Kurt Hinish.
Right.
And instead of saying, well, but this is what we would do with Kurt or this is what we do, he said, okay, here's who we got. Got Howard Cross, got Jacob Lacey. They're 260. I mean, Howard Cross, I'm looking at it here on the roster. He's listed at 275 pounds. I'll bet you a steak at Outback or Texas Roadhouse or wherever you want to go, that if you and I went and weighed Howard Cross tomorrow, he's not 275 pounds.
No, we have to make sure he takes all the nickels out of his pocket too. Yeah.
Jacob Lacey's listed at 275 pounds.
Yeah,
those are your nose guards yesterday against Wisconsin.
And Wisconsin brings the beef. I mean,
but it's also a huge credit to Matt Bayless because the Notre Dame linemen are strong.
Yes,
and we saw that yesterday. But there were also about 5 or 6 plays where I saw a Notre Dame defensive lineman trying to slant, and Wisconsin caught him and drove him off the ball. But there was nowhere to go because of the way that the linebackers were playing and the way that it was such an 11-man together that they had an answer. That's fine. We got our safeties coming down, or we've got our linebackers crashing. And you made a point to me before the show, Vince, that you thought Drew White played well when you watched it live. But you were even more impressed when you watched the film. Talk to me about what you saw from Drew when you broke things down.
Yeah, so obviously he made plays in the run game. Don't get me wrong; he was all over the football just like he always is. But he made plays that you're not going to see in the stat sheet. And just to let you know, he had 4 total tackles, 3 solos, and of course the big interception at the end. And that's not even what I'm referring to. He was in the right place at the right time in the pass game all day, right? Mm-hmm. So when Mertz would roll out, he would throw the ball and it would just go straight into the ground, right? Even if the guy caught it, Drew White was right there. Mm-hmm. Or he had to throw it away because Drew White was right there. Or there was one play where I think it was a running back he was going to catch the ball, but he dropped it. But even if he had caught it, Drew White was right there. Every time I looked at an incomplete pass or something along those lines, I found 40, and he was on his guy, and he was making plays. And if it wasn't for him, there would have been a bunch of dump downs, and it would have been a lot of opportunity for extra yards for Wisconsin. Mertz had nothing to go to because they were protecting everything underneath. And Drew White did a great job yesterday. He did a great job, and we've knocked him for not being good in the pass game
because of his length.
Yes. Right. But he was,
and he did a little bit like peaky. He was always trying to come downhill.
He didn't have to do that. He had enough faith in his front that he didn't have to be peaky. So I thought he did a really, really good job. He is coming into his own at linebacker. I absolutely believe that.
And I thought that, this is a game where we'd see a lot more Bo Bauer. We didn't necessarily see a lot more Bo Bauer. We saw about the normal amount of Bo Bauer. But how they used him again was, okay, Bo's not like Drew. We
Yeah.
didn't see Bo Bauer dropping into coverage like Drew
Go.
did. We saw him, and that's again, know your people. Know your people.
Yep.
And again, I thought this staff was good, was really on its game yesterday. And Wisconsin came out that first third quarter that they ran a shovel pass. And they had a couple things they did, and how quickly Notre Dame was able to adjust to that and be prepared for that was just really good. And then what was the biggest knock above all others that we saw that we talked about the defense in the first two games? I'm going to be honest with you. My big concern was when Notre Dame fell behind 13-10 in the fourth quarter. I'm like, well, this hasn't been a great fourth quarter defense. They're an undersized D line against a big physical offensive line. What's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And then Chris Tyree does what he does, right, and sparks that. And then, but they didn't. There was no flinch. They didn't. Lou Holtz used to talk about that, like you just can't flinch. You can't flinch,
right?
And they didn't flinch, and they put the. I mean, what's the word we've been talking about with them? Finish. Got to finish.
And
we talked about it. It was my what to look for thing, right? Finish.
Yeah.
And goodness gracious, did they ever finish?
Well, okay. So I'll throw this up here, Mark. Thank you very much for the super sticker.
Yes.
We asked the defense in game 3 against Purdue that we needed a full game from them, right? That's the one thing that we put out there, right? The key to the game was no big plays and a complete game. Well, they didn't let Purdue score the last 22 minutes of the game. That's great, right? So I had faith the defense, was getting better, and they were getting better, and they were getting better, right? Well, they took that to a whole other level in the game on Saturday because not only did they finish, but they put their foot on the throat of Wisconsin and they pushed down, right? All 11 of them at the same time and just said, hey, this is our game. Hey, thanks, Chris, for giving us back the lead. We'll take it from here. I mean, that's basically what it was. And we said from the very get-go, if Wisconsin gets down and they're forced to throw the ball, that plays into the hand of Notre Dame. And they just made Wisconsin pay for it. I mean, and it all started in the first quarter when they wouldn't let Wisconsin run the football. I mean, they were off, behind the chains, whatever terminology you want to use, off schedule. They could not get going what they wanted to get going because this defense came out early, punched them in the mouth in the run game, and they sent Wisconsin packing early. And then, of course, they had to throw, and they made them pay for that. So this was just an absolute complete game by the defense. And in the fourth quarter, they just shut the door so hard. I mean, the defense and the special teams outscored the offense. Okay. I mean, and the defense outscored Wisconsin, period.
Right.
And we talked about Graham Mertz throwing more touchdowns to Notre Dame than he did to his own team. So, I mean, the defense just played outstanding, and it was so much fun to watch. Like, I'm so glad I didn't leave that game early.
Yeah. Here's a couple notes. Here's something I wrote in my key takeaways, Vince, that'll just show that I think context is always important, right?
Sure.
This is Notre Dame held Wisconsin to just 74 rushing yards. In the previous 8 seasons, the Badgers were held to below 75 rushing yards just 6 times. 3 of those times came in 2014 and 2015, so it's been a while. Notre Dame held Wisconsin to just 2.64 yards per carry, despite only having 4 tackles for loss in the game, and the only sack of the game technically went for 0 yards because the ball was recovered forward.
Right.
So to hold a team like Wisconsin, Wisconsin had a grand total of one carry that went for double-digit yards, and it went for 10.
Barely.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is a level of dominance. See, because like the reason I point to the tackles for loss, Vince, as you had mentioned, tackles for loss sometimes can skew numbers. Like if you have like 8 tackles for loss for minus 40 yards and like 4 of them were sacks, they really ran for 130 yards, but you had minus 40, so it looks like 90. But no, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
This was a level of dominance that you just don't see very often. And look, Wisconsin, based on the official stats, only had 5 negative yards in the game. They had 79 gained yards the entire game. So including like taking away the negatives, right? 79 gained yards in this game.
Which
in a game that was competitive for 3.5 quarters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that tells you right there that, you know, we talked about the fact that the defensive line needed to control things with the offensive line so that the linebackers could you know, roam free and meet the running back at the line of scrimmage, etc. Right? They did that all game, and the defensive line was meeting the ball carrier at the line of scrimmage. Now, I give Wisconsin credit because they're a good run team, so they were falling forward so that they weren't tackles for loss, but they were 1 and 2 yard gains, right? And so, yeah, they didn't fill the stat sheet with a bunch of TFLs, but they didn't allow Wisconsin to do anything in the run game, which if Wisconsin can't run the ball, they're done.
Right.
I mean, they're absolutely done.
Especially now because Graham Mertz is just not good.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me about this on the message board, and I thought this was a really good question. He said, you know, look, was Graham Mertz just like, was it a bad? I mean, he was a highly ranked recruit. Notre Dame wanted him. Notre Dame tried to flip him from Wisconsin. Like they tried hard. Was it a misevaluation? And my answer was, I don't think it was a misevaluation. I think he went to the wrong school.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is he was a shotgun, catch it, read it, and let it rip guy in high school.
You know,
and you go to an offense that it's under center and play actions and downfield reads and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think he's good at that. And I think that they kind of jumped on that first game and said, you know, hey, here's what he is. And, you know, so I would be curious what they would look like right now if they still had Jack Cohn. Now, of course, that would assume that Jack Cohn didn't play last year anyway because of the injury. They would have had him back. But they, you know, that's kind of the thing for me, Vince, is there's like a moth flying down here. This has been a weird show.
It has been a weird show.
Your kids running into the doors. I got giant bugs flying in my face.
This is not just me.
Yeah. So, but you know, but anyway, that also hurts them. That is something that I think helped Notre Dame yesterday. Because I do think there was one thing that we did note is another thing that I thought was impressive about this defense is there weren't a lot of plays where like, boy, if they make that play, things are different. There really wasn't a lot of that. There was that one throw late in the second quarter that where Clarence Lewis got beat on the double move. That guy catches that. DJ Brown probably tackles him, but they're close to field goal range or in. Sure. I'd have to go back and look, but they were at least going
they would have been in
field goal range.
Yeah.
With that, but you know, maybe you know that makes it what would have been 10-6 at halftime. You know, but there weren't even a lot of plays like that where, boy, if that guy doesn't get tripped up there, he's gone. There wasn't that. The 3 times they had chances for big plays in the game, they hit 2 of them.
Right.
You know,
the shovel pass, the pass to the tight end down the seam, and then the missed play down the right side. Yeah.
Right. It just Notre Dame didn't even give them those chances in this game. And it was a really as good of a coaching plus execution combination. Yes. Here's my favorite troll attempt because I got a kick out of it's okay. I got a kick out of just like some of the Wisconsin things and hearing what people are saying about Wisconsin and the fact that they were a freaking touchdown lead. And I try not to troll a whole lot on Twitter. I don't tweet as much on Twitter anymore. I just put up my stories, but I said Notre Dame's offense, 20 points. Or 20 points. Notre Dame's defense, 14 points. Wisconsin's entire team, 13 points. At least they outscored the special teams, who only had 7 points. You know, and so for all these people, it really wasn't that dumb. You know, look, the games are 4 quarters. At what point do we stop saying this counts?
Right.
I mean, Wisconsin
stops counting when it's
do anything on Notre Dame.
Yeah,
they could not do anything on Notre Dame defensively yesterday.
Right.
If that game would have kept playing, all Notre Dame would have done was keep putting it away. I mean, once Notre Dame got that lead, this, like I said, is the greatest sequence. It was the greatest team sequence we've seen this season. The kick return for the touchdown, the immediate stop by the defense, the answer by the offense to go down and score a touchdown.
Yep.
That was the greatest
backup quarterback
whole team sequence and a third string left tackle.
Right.
The whole sequence of that team ball right there put that game away. And as we've said before, if you get Wisconsin behind, they are not good. That all happened before the pick sixes. Notre Dame built an 11-point lead on Wisconsin before the fluky pick sixes. Chris Tyree taking a kick back to the house is not a freaking fluke.
Right.
He's one of the fastest players in college football, and you finally turned him loose, and that's what happened.
Right.
That was a well-executed play. And I've heard people say, it was a fluky. No, it was not. Notre Dame went up 24-13, right? I mean, that's the thing is they went down and then kicked another field goal to go up 27-13. They were pulling away from Wisconsin because they were better than Wisconsin.
Correct.
And they were better for Wisconsin for 4 quarters. Wisconsin had one turn of events in the third quarter that was built around Jack Cohn getting hurt and the one long play where they kind of got some momentum. And then Notre Dame said, nope. And they didn't just do it with a kick return. They did it with a kick return, an immediate stop on defense, and an offensive drive where they went down the field and scored, where Drew Pine went 4 of 4 for 49 yards and a touchdown. That's not fluky.
Right.
That's called we're better than you, even when our backup quarterback's in the game. That's what that's called. And that's what made this a fun game to watch. Notre Dame was the better team yesterday on a neutral field. So it's not like you can say, well, it was a home game. It was a neutral field.
There was a ton of Wisconsin people there.
Notre Dame was the better team from start to finish. And anyone that says otherwise is just wrong, in my opinion.
Correct. Agreed.
So anything else to add to this, Vince? I'm going to go through here looking for some comments yet from yesterday.
No, I mean, look, it was as soon as Chris Tyree took that ball back, it was game over, and it felt that way. Like it totally deflated the entire stadium. And somebody asked what the atmosphere was like. Where was it? Anyway, somebody asked what the atmosphere was like. It was a great atmosphere.
It was the super chat from Corey D.
Yeah, I mean, it was
like, yeah.
It was here we go, Jeff. What was the atmosphere like in the stadium at the start of the fourth from the Wisconsin jump around and Wisconsin taking the lead until the Tyree run, and thoughts during all of it? Look, when they were playing jump around, you could feel it in the stadium. Like, and that was and most of the Wisconsin fans were on the other side of the stadium. Okay. You could feel it. And it was cool. I was like, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. You know, I dug it. Like it was a really cool feeling. But I think it also got everybody else fired up too.
Well, but they also went down and took the lead after that too. Vince.
For sure.
I mean,
yeah,
right.
But as soon as Chris Tyree scored, that's when the Wisconsin people started to take off because that's how much confidence they had in their offense.
They knew they had their chance and lost it.
Correct.
They knew they had their chance.
It was amazing how fast the red went away after Chris Tyree came back and scored that touchdown. So
like crap, we know our offense isn't scoring.
Yeah, they're like, well, we're out of here. Let's beat the traffic. So, because it's funny because I didn't notice it right away, and all of a sudden I looked, and because it was a blinding red because it was right in my face, and then it was mostly blue seats like really quickly. So, and obviously the Irish fans stayed till the end. So it was just a great atmosphere for a neutral site game. I give a lot of credit to that whole end of things. It was really well done. So
yeah, it seemed like a really good college environment in an NFL stadium, which you don't often get.
No, you don't. I thought it was, and the outside environment was great. I mean, so yeah, it was well done. Except for the long line to get in, that stunk. It took me a half hour to get in, but other than that, it was fantastic. And I would highly recommend them doing that again. And if they're going to do it at Soldier Field, make sure they're playing a Midwest team that travels well. Don't play Miami there.
And Wisconsin has a very good traveling crowd.
Absolutely. And it was, look, both teams were obviously ranked, and so it made it a bigger deal. I get that. But make sure, if you're going to do a neutral site game, make sure the other fans can get there. I mean, that's my big thing.
Right.
So
Joel Leeson says, box score said Hamilton had half a tackle. So weird, and yet says volumes about how important he is. He actually had three tackles, 2 solo and 1 assisted.
Correct.
But still not a lot of tackles.
But your point is still correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what D-Rock said that we talked about before the game is if you don't hear Kyle Hamilton's name a whole lot this weekend, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Because of how we thought Notre Dame was going to use him. And they did use him the way that we had hoped that they would.
Right.
See, at least the defensive staff listens to us. I said jokingly for people that don't have a
they're subscribed.
It's like, hey, Driscoll, so explain to me what you were thinking on that one. Let's walk me through. No, that doesn't.
What do you want me to do here?
Yeah. Michael Leake and I appreciate that. Says you were spot on. Vinny and Coach D, you were spot on with your whiskey pregame talk.
It was actually probably the most spot on I feel like I have been like in a really long time. Like I had a feeling about how this game was going to go, not with the pick sixes at the end. But the rest of it, like I told everybody, I have faith in the defense, man, and they powered through for me. I appreciated it.
Yep. Here's that one from D-Rock that you pulled up earlier.
Yeah. Yep.
So anything else to add, Vince? I'm kind of going through here to find some more comments.
Yeah.
Here we go. Top 5 defensive players from yesterday. Go.
Poof. That's tough because it was like 20. I will go with let's see. Jason Adamiola. I will go with this is in no particular order, by the way. Hart, obviously, White, Bertrand, Foskey. Have I hit 5 yet?
Nope.
No
Adamiola, huh? No Cross.
I said Jason.
Oh, so you Adamiola. Said Hart, Bertrand,
White,
Foskey, and Jason.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
there's my 5.
I don't think it's possible to pick 5, so I'm not going to try to.
I don't think you can either. Like I could have kept going. But thanks for leaving me out hanging out to dry there, buddy. Appreciate that.
Well, hey, you know what? I wanted to give you your chance to get that out there. Yeah, to get you back.
Good friend.
Had to get you back. Let's get back to here. I'm trying to find some more of these comments here real quick.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, I kind of got to wrap here a little bit.
Okay.
I may or may
you
not
have bounce, you got to bounce, but I wanted just all these people that kind of joined us late on a Sunday night. I wanted to at least get some of their comments up here.
Patrick Barnes with a super chat. I'm going to throw it up here. He says, do you think Kelly will use the return game more now? Sorry if you already answered that. I just jumped on the podcast. I hope so.
I sure hope so. But I'm skeptical to think it may be a thing where it's like, well, we did it once and he'll do it until the first time he gets tackled at like the 16, and then he's like,
and then it'll be, Yeah, exactly.
My question, though, but here's my serious question on this, right? Like we're just kind of giving Coach Kelly a hard time on that one. But serious question is, what does this now do to future teams with their kickoff? How many more chances is he going to get?
I wouldn't give him any chances.
I mean, and then does some of these guys who maybe don't have that kind of leg, are they going to kick a couple out of bounds because they're trying to pin him in the corner? That's why a thing like that is so important.
Absolutely.
And how do they handle it? How do they respond to it? And I still thought special teams wise, there's a couple missed opportunities. I didn't understand why they didn't try to heat him up right before the half. Put Kyron Williams at the 50-yard line and just send everybody. And if he booms it, and then okay, fine, it rolls and you go into halftime. But if you can force him to shank it because you're sending everybody, maybe you catch a line drive,
go get a field goal,
or maybe he kicks it out of bounds. That's just one of those things where. That's when we talk about lack of aggressiveness. We're not saying you send 10 guys as hard as you can every time there's a punt, because then you're going to get beat. They're going to fake a punt and they're going to beat you. Right? There's a time and a place when a team is backed up. That's a time to go after it. When a team is kind of at the 38 or 39 going in and they're going to pooch, that's not a good time to go after it for me, because you're more likely to see a fake there, because it's not as damaging if they don't get it because you're still in there. You know what I mean? So you got to be smart about it. But I do think there were some missed opportunities. But I was happy to see them finally call that return. It would have been so easy for them in that situation to say, hey, look, we're behind now. We can't take a chance. We've got to just fair catch it. And honestly, the kicker kicked it exactly where you want it. I mean, Notre Dame was running a left return, and the kicker kicked it all the way from a Notre Dame standpoint, the Notre Dame right corner.
Well, he said it was a center return. That's what Kelly said.
Is that what he said, center?
He said center, yeah.
So they're running a center return, and the guy does it from all the way into the back corner.
Right, and I understand the skepticism to run a center return because you're spreading out your guys more and it's harder to block. I get it. When you run a right return and the kick is usually put to the right, you use the sideline and but the problem is there's less lanes, right? When you do a center return, you've got more possibility for lanes, and there was a huge lane. Yes. You could have driven a Mack truck through it. But
it required you to make a move.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing about a return game. You got to make one guy miss.
And then burn it.
And luckily it was the kicker. But then he outran a couple other dudes.
He outran a couple dudes, yeah, right? Absolutely.
We did get a huge super chat here from Riza. Appreciate you. Wow.
Riza.
That is a new live super chat record.
I was wondering, okay, so he said a minute ago, Oh, here he goes. He
Oh,
said,
here we go. All right.
Redirecting that Quinn Banner plane money to you guys. Keep up the good work.
All right, so that's what that is. All right, so what that is he asked a question on the premium message board. So I'm gonna pull this one up. It was actually it was kind of funny, but let me pull up his question here real quick. So he said 2 serious questions. The first one was, this is on the premium board. Since Quinn won't be fired midseason, is there anyone on staff who can help? They can't be blind to what's going on. Would it be Kelly or Taylor? Is anyone even qualified on staff? Not to coach it. Look, and here's the other thing I'll say is, I think Jeff Quinn is competent enough that if somebody can direct him on, hey, this is what we need to do, I think he can coach that. I do. It's going to take Tommy Reese and Brian Kelly and Lance Taylor and John McNulty to sit down and say, hey, look, this is exactly what we need to get.
Yeah.
And then you got to go coach it. So I think he's competent enough to do that. I don't think he's an idiot. I don't think he's this coach that doesn't deserve to be coach. No, I'm not taking those shots at him. He's not doing a good enough job. In 3 of his 4 seasons, you could argue he didn't do a good enough job. This year has been especially bad because it's a combination of him not doing a good job plus a lot of new guys and
new guys,
things.
Young guys.
Right. And so I want to, I do think there are things can do to people to take over. No, but people to get Jeff Quinn to do what he needs to do. And maybe you have the GA, as we've said, I'll stand by this. The one thing I think you can do is you can say to your GA, you have one responsibility. It's get Tosh Baker going. Right. Or maybe you make it Tosh Baker and Joe Alt, your left tackles, but get them going. I'll handle everybody else. You get them ready to go. They're your pet project. And then Tommy and Coach Reese and Lance Taylor and John McNulty need to say to him, hey, this is what you need to do. See this? That ain't happening. Fix that. See that? Fix that. His second question was, if anyone were willing to coordinate it, I would consider funding a plane flying a banner with a certain message about Quinn over the Cincinnati game on the parking lot pregame. Would never say to fire him, but maybe something like, hey, Brian, we actually know Quinn stinks for the record. And so instead of putting money towards that, my guy sent us a super chat. So much more constructive way, because we will do verbally on this podcast what you wanted to do with a plane. Yeah. And my response to that was, I'm not in favor of doing that because I think that hurts the players more. And he was being sarcastic and funny. He wasn't being serious. But
Which we appreciate, believe me.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate the super chat. And yeah, very, very much. So
very much.
But that is huge. That is huge. And it's a lot of people appreciating it too. It's not just us that appreciates that.
No doubt.
That's what's nice about this community is that's awesome, Vince. Do you see that?
That's great.
Here's a couple things before we go. Craig Kelm says, Reza, thank you so much. Craig Kelm says, we got spoiled with Lou Holt's special teams dominance. Great to see the kick return. I mean, we've seen kick returns be a big part of what Notre Dame has done during periods of the Brian Kelly tenure. I mean, we saw George Atkinson took a couple back to the house early in his tenure. I still can't believe they're gone, man. That stings. Doesn't seem real. CJ Sanders had a couple punt returns and a couple kick returns. Like, I think he's second only to Rocket in all-time kick punt returns for scores in Notre Dame history, right? I believe. So we've seen it. What Polian has been better at is the coverage. If he could do that and then be more aggressive in the returns, this special teams could be better. But that's the thing is, like, the coverage units were terrible under Scott Booker, but the returns were good.
Yeah.
And like they flipped. It's just like, why can't we ever get them on the same page? Michael Eakin wants to know, Reza, did you win a parlay? Because that's where Shelton Hager was at yesterday. Shelton Hager was feeling good because he won some money.
Notre Dame won him some money. Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate it. But anyway, Appreciate you very much, Riza. And we appreciate
Absolutely.
everybody that joined us tonight. We had a big crowd for tonight's Upon Further Review.
It was
Make
great.
sure you're signed up. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, notification bell. If you're listening via podcast, please give us a 5-star review. If you are not a part of our premium message board, sign up below, boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'd love to see you on there. We're growing, lots of good football talk. I put a video in there where we're talking about, is Jack Cone, is it Cone, is it the offensive line? So we cut up a video, we put it on the message board. We can only put it on the premium message board because we can't have it, as easily to see and those kind of things. And we were able to talk ball and all those kind of things. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing on the boards, and it's growing, and it's been a lot of fun. So appreciate y'all very much. So for Vince, right? I'm gonna see if I did it. I did it right. I pointed in the right direction.
This guy.
For Vince, I'm Brian. Thanks again for being with us. We'll be back again tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern to talk about Brian Kelly's press conference and also the rest of what we saw in college.
The week that
weekend.
was.
So another wild weekend. I had a week a couple weeks ago where I went 0-3 with because we picked, not only do we pick the Notre Dame games, we picked national games too. I went like totally. 0-3 a couple weeks ago. This past week, and I nailed them all. I got Notre Dame right, not the score, but the winner loser. I picked Arkansas to beat Texas A&M, and I picked NC State to beat Clemson. So I got all three of them. So
I didn't. I went 1-2.
You went 1-2. What, you got the Notre Dame one right?
Of course.
You picked A&M and Clemson. I can understand why you picked Clemson.
Yeah.
I get that one. So anyway, all right, everybody, have a great night. We'll talk to you again very, very soon. Have a good one.